So I wanted to do a video to explain to you what I hate and what I rate about the T7. So we have 3 T7s now, and across these I've probably done about 4,000 miles. So we have commercial spec one, which is now on air suspension, fairly basic spec one that is, got a few extras but generally quite a low spec one, although it is a DSG or an auto. We have the 4Motion DSG, which is the higher spec one with the colour coded bumpers, and then we have an even higher spec electric one. So similar but a little bit more spec on top of that. But yeah, across these now I've probably put about 4,000 miles on them. So it's given me a good opportunity to try them and decide what I really like about them, what I really hate about them. So I thought I'd share my opinion on these with you. So the first thing I hate about this, and it's the one that everybody's going to expect me to say I want to know more about, is that Ford wet belt engine that's in the Transporters, all of them, not the electric one obviously, although that does have electric driven motor, and the Transit Custom on the end there. The Ford wet belt engine, I hate it. But I don't actually hate the engine, I just hate the fact that it gives everybody a reason, an excuse to say they dislike the vehicle. So many people have just jumped on the fact that it's got a wet belt engine, but I have every confidence personally, based on my research, the engineers I've spoken to at Ford and Volkswagen, that any issues they had with the previous generation wet belt are fixed for this engine. Now, I'm not saying that a wet belt engine is the answer and every single vehicle should have a wet belt. I'm telling you that this engine is quieter because it's got a wet belt and there are other bonuses to it. I'm not saying they are the future and everything should have them, but I'm saying I'm confident that this Ford engine with the wet belt that they're using now isn't a concern, but I hate it because it's the first thing people do. They go, oh, so-and-so had a problem with it, or I saw somebody comment wet belt, so I'll just comment wet belt on your video when I've actually not done the research. But that's number one main reason I hate this engine. So on that point, what I rate about it, I rate that Volkswagen have given you a 5-year warranty on this, 5-year breakdown, 5 services, which you don't get on the Ford, but that's Volkswagen UK only actually that have done that because they're confident that this engine is going to have no problems in your vehicle. I rate that Volkswagen are giving you a 5-year warranty on this engine. Right, hate number 2 is my initial hate for these, and that's the mirrors. So the Volkswagen mirror is a transporter mirror. If you pan around there and look at that T6, has got a smaller, neater, very Volkswagen-esque rear view mirror, and the T7 has got a very big, bulky, Ford-esque Transit Custom style rear view mirror. And initially when I saw it, I thought, that's a product for us, we'll develop one that looks smaller, until I drove one. And then I realized actually that rear view mirror was really practical and really useful. So I have a Crafter, and my Crafter has these massive mirrors with the 2 blind spot mirrors on. And while driving my Crafter, it kind of dawned on me how I relied on the blind spot mirrors. And then while driving the T7, if you come around here, these big mirrors are because you've got your standard visual mirror and you've got that neat little blind spot mirror there. So aesthetically from the outside, I get it, they're not very pretty, but actually I really much prefer the drivability of a T7 over a T6.1 with regards to the blind spot mirrors. Okay, so number 3, let's talk about the front end. Lots of people say they hate the front end of the Volkswagen. When I first went to see it at Hanover, I was unsure of it, and it's grown on me more and more. But do I hate that front end? No, I actually don't. I like it. I like that. I think it looks very preface T5-esque with the kind of smiley face. And lots of people say to me, yeah, but you've got to admit that the Transit Custom is a better looking vehicle. Okay, so this Transit Custom has some extra styling bits that we're working on with another factory. But yes, I guess I would definitely admit Ford have done a very good job with the styling on the Transit Custom. It's not my kind of styling. Yes, I've owned a Ford Focus at one point in my life, but generally I've owned a hell of a lot of Volkswagen Audi stuff. I prefer that kind of happy, smiley look to the more aggressive look of a Ford. It's just not me. I appreciate for a certain market it's good and they like it, but for me, I'm not a fan. Although I do think they've done a very good job of it. On that point, so many people say they hate the front of the T7. Well, that's just good news for us because that means we can design a bumper that will radically change these that we do think you'll like. So I'll show you a little sneak peek of the GTT bumper that we're working on. I don't want to show you in full details because we've done this before and somebody copied it, but here's a blurred image of what our T7 GTT bumper is going to look like, which will radically change the front of this. And I think people that hate the front end of the T7 will love it after we've got that bumper available. Okay, so let's move around to the side profile, and this is a part of the van I do hate. Transit Custom is different from the T7 on the front, the wing and the door, and then from there until you get around the back they're the same. Now my issue with this is, and the reason why I hate it, again, if you look at that T6 over there, you'll see this line here is completely straight, and that's the same from the split screen through to the bay to a T4, T5, right the way through to a T6.1. This line here was straight. Now with this, when Ford and Volkswagen have done the collaboration, they've decided to go for the Ford kick up here, which just says Transit Custom. Anybody from a side view looks at that panel there and thinks Transit Custom, and I think that's a lot of the hate that it's getting when people see, when they see rolling shots of this, they say, oh, it's just a Transit. because visually from the side it does look very Transit-esque because of that rear quarter. Now I would have really liked it, Volkswagen put the effort into doing a whole front end different, a front door, whether they could have changed this panel here so it was just followed that straight line to give it that more Volkswagen feel than it does the Ford. So this is a point I hate that rear quarter screams Ford Custom. So moving around the back here, let's talk about the obvious, the one thing that comes up, the rear view camera, or the breakaway camera as Volkswagen call it, the placement of it and the fact it's off center. The first time I saw this was at Hanover and I just couldn't quite figure for the life of me why Volkswagen would do that. I've since learned it's because it's programmed to sit here, whether it's a tailgate or a barn door. Now this vehicle is a low spec vehicle and it doesn't have it, but the camera would sit in exactly the same place, slightly offset. So instead of going to the effort to program two different cameras and the placement, they've just done one, which bothers me. But having said that, I wish we had it on this van because it is such a good tool. That breakaway camera gives you a really clear visual view through your mirror out the back here. It's so much better than actually having a mirror, but it's also, when you put the vehicle in reverse, as much as the reverse camera is here, this camera also dips to give you a better view for your reversing. It's so much wider than your rear view would be out your window, but also it's constantly recording to an SD card in your wing mirror that's doing the whole job. With regards to this though, and with this van, we now have tailgate windows for these as we do the Transit Custom. So you won't see this. So on a vehicle that's got a window, imagine the window's in here, this is actually mounted to with another bracket, same camera to the back of the glass. So you won't be able to see it from outside, it'll be mounted on the inside of the glass. We will do a video soon on how to fit that and how you replace that, because we've got the tailgates in and we've got the brackets in, just to show you how simple it is. But most people that do this, I would think, would probably end up with a rear window in the van, in which case they're not going to see that breakaway camera. I hate the fact it's placed there, but for me and for anybody that's putting a window in, it's not going to be a problem. But I do love how good that breakaway camera is and what a good tool it is. So while we're around the back here, I just want to talk about what VW have changed here. So here's the Ford Transit Custom. Again, ignore that rear bumper because that's something we're working on with another factory. But you can see the back doors are actually different on the two. The rear lights are different, the shape of the windows are different. But the most noticeable thing here on the Transit Custom is the reverse lights and the camera are here and they're kind of sticking out. I've seen these on one of the forums that have been knocked off and smashed because they're sticking out and they've kind of they just look ugly. Whereas on all the Volkswagens, you'll see Volkswagen have hidden the same thing behind this plastic trim that is very Volkswagen-esque, that carries over from the previous models. And it looks so much nicer and cleaner finished off than Ford have done with the Transit Custom. Here's a hate of mine. I mentioned this in a previous video, but I'm disappointed in the way the door handles are pressed in. So as this shape here is molded in, it's almost like it's just kinking this panel here. It shows up more on certain colors, but we'll try and get the camera angle to show it. But where this is obviously pressed in, it's almost like it's either pressed in too far or there's a bit of a bend. So you get a slight bit of a kink here. It's the same on all the Fords and on the Volkswagen. Again, it's color related to whether you see it more, but I just feel like that's not had enough thought into that. And there's just this slight little kink here that 99% of you wouldn't notice, but in the right angle, I can see it and it does bother me. So that's a hate I've got about how the T7's finished. So one thing I do really rate about what Volkswagen have done, so on the Ford here, it's got this very Ford-esque lock here, which just looks ugly. It sits right in the door with this cap on it. And when I first saw this on the Ford, I thought, I really hope Volkswagen do this. Well, thankfully they haven't. So if we go around to the T7, you'll see Volkswagen have done what they've done with the previous models, is they've mounted that lock inside the door handle here, so you don't have this separate, dirty, ugly circle here with the lock in it. Looks much better finished, so I rate very much what Volkswagen have done with this over what the Transit Customs had done. So inside, I rate and I hate two things. I rate that it's wider than the previous Transporter platform. The conversion companies I've spoken to have said they think it'll make more people go for the short wheelbase over the long wheelbase because that extra width, which we'll show you here, gives them that extra space for a wider bed or the wider cupboards and just gives you that much bit more room than you would get in the previous T5 to T6.1 platform. That's been able to be achieved though by something I hate, unfortunately, and that is the gap between the wheels there. So basically the wheels now are narrower. So whereas before in a Transporter, if we were running a van on air like here, we could go with a wider rear wheel. So I've driven like an 11-inch rear wheel to kind of get that real stance look, but on the T7 the maximum width you can get of a wheel is a 9, and it just from a kind of show vehicle point of view, it bothers me a little bit, but I appreciate why Volkswagen have done it, and the gain of having that extra space on the inside is a massive benefit for that reason. While we're on the inside, here's something else I hate. I hate that this panel here, well, the no panel comes in this space here, so it's a completely empty roof panel. Having said that, it's a very easy fix. I already know people that make panels that go there that are relatively cost effective. The conversion companies are obviously going to need a piece to go in there, but a really simple piece that can just bolt up there is already on the market, but it's just a shame it comes out the factory without any trim there at all, and it's just all exposed. So I've got a rate and a hate here while we're in the back here. So I rate that it has this extra storage space. I think it's really handy for tradesmen that still have a bulkhead in. I want to be able to put stuff underneath that seat there. I mean, Mikey's got the air management and stuff for the solo air there, which is utilising that space. But if you wanted to put planks of wood in there or things, you needed that extra space from a tradesman point of view, having the space that goes into that double seat is super handy. What I hate about this though is when you take the bulkhead out, you can't see it because this is in, but all the back of the trims are exposed, and there's not a trim that covers that available on the market. Having said that, we've developed it. So soon we will have a trim that looks very OEM that covers up the back of the bulkhead area once you've removed the bulkhead from a transporter. So what I was just saying about those trims, it's hard to explain because Mikey's van's got the bulkhead in. This van's had the bulkhead taken out, and you can see how all this is exposed. Now we've actually located the trims for this one that would have come off a combi vehicle to allow us to put these in. It was a faff trying to find the parts. They're not really ideal, but as I said, we've developed our own, which will go as a replacement. So it just clips on the existing panel where the bulkhead would sit, which covers up all this area. So it's just finishing it off so much nicer if you're doing it, turning it into a combi or a camper, and you don't want all this exposed area after you've removed the bulkhead. Right, putting my business hat on, I hate that all of the headlights are LED on a T7 now. So they do two versions. So you have your standard one, which is a complete LED, and you have their high-end version, which has got the ID lights on it, which does all the sensors and turns the dip and the main beam off. A big part of our market is selling headlights for the T6.1 right back to the T5 by Volkswagen, putting LED headlights in their vehicles already. Kind of takes away a whole chunk of our market. But having said that, these are quite unspectacular to look at. So we're already working with the factory to produce a lot more nicer looking like this, with more features that do replace these, but they are already LED out of the factory. So I rate Volkswagen for adding full LEDs. The Transit Custom low spec ones don't come with full LEDs, but I hate it that they've done it because it means we're probably going to sell less lights in the future, and that's just me being honest with my business hat on. While we're outside, let's talk about the Ford Volkswagen collaboration and whether I rate or hate that. Okay, I hate it because it gives people reason to complain. Let's be honest about this. There's lots of people out there that see this vehicle that we're never going to buy one anyway. Without sounding like a knob about it, some people just could never afford one, so they'll use that as an excuse. Everybody that's got a T5 will say the T5's the best. Everybody that's got a T5.1 will say that's the best. T6, T6.1. If you've just bought those vehicles and invested in it, you're going to think that's the best. You're blinkered to the fact there's a better van out there, and partly that's just down to the fact that you couldn't afford it, you've just bought a new van and you just want to be committed to what you've got is the best. Those vehicles are great. T5 to T6.1 are great. This is a better vehicle. Like it or not, my opinion is, and lots of people that have actually driven them and used them, the spec and how they drive and all the things they've got, they are a better vehicle. Volkswagen had to stop producing this vehicle in Germany. They couldn't carry on. The price of the vehicles would have been so expensive that nobody would have bought the Volkswagen fully made version of a T7. So what have they done? They've reached out to the company that make 5 times more of the same platform vehicle than them. So Volkswagen have gone to Ford and gone, let's collaborate on a vehicle, let's make your vehicle better, but let's base it on the fact that they know they sell 5 times more of these. Now, there's not 5 times the transporter owners driving around in Transit Customs going, oh, I'm driving a Ford, I hate my vehicle, it's a Transit Custom. They're loving their vehicles. That's why they sell so many of them. It's a cracking van. That's a better van. Volkswagen have made a decision. Yes, it's made in Turkey. Yes, as I've said previously, the production quality perhaps isn't as good. There's things like the way the handles are pressed in I don't like, or some of the cut lines I don't like. But all in all, it doesn't put me off buying one of these vehicles. It doesn't put me off this and think, I don't look at this and go, this is a Ford, even though I know there's a lot of Ford parts on it. I'm impressed with this vehicle. I'm impressed with the way Volkswagen have done their version of the best-selling van that's on the market. So yes, I hate there's a collaboration because it gives people to complain, but I rate Volkswagen for doing it, and I rate what the outcome was of their version of a Transit Custom. Okay, so one thing that comes up on the EVs and also the PHEVs is the electric charging port, the fact that it's here. It's not great, is it, really? And people say, well, if you crash it, there's loads of stuff going on there. I get that. I agree. It would have been much nicer if it was somewhere else. I don't really know why it couldn't have gone where the fuel filler cap would be. I also don't know why it perhaps couldn't have gone in the badge here like we do with our e-grills. There could have been a way to do that, but that's how they've done it. I don't necessarily hate it. I just think probably there would have been a better way of doing that. I think if somebody had put more thought into it. The downside for us is when we do things like design our GTD bumper, we've got to make 2 moulds because we've got to make one that's got a cutout here as well. So it doesn't bother me massively. I can see why it does bother some people, but yeah, I think that potentially could have had a bit more thought gone into the placement, but I'm sure there's a good reason why Volkswagen like like Ford, have put it in exactly that spot. Okay, so moving inside the van, there's not a lot I dislike about this van inside. It drives really nice. It feels very modern. It feels very up to date. I like the way the whole interior is laid out. I really rate the Volkswagen have gone with their own steering wheel, with the actual physical touch buttons. I really dislike the Ford one. The square shape of it bothers me. The cut-off shapes are at exactly the point I would find really uncomfortable. Now, I hate all modern vehicles have driver aids. I hate that all modern vehicles have a speed warning and they have lane assist. Now, I think that's a European standard that's gone on any vehicle after a certain year, which is on this vehicle. Now, I really dislike it on the Transit. So on the Transit, the lane assist seems to be more severe than this, and the speed warning is definitely more severe. It beeps at you really loud and continuously. Now, I appreciate those driver aids are there for a reason. Lane assist where I live and around here, there's lots of windy country narrow roads, and on lots of vehicles the lane assist is constantly trying to pull you into the centre of the vehicle. On the Volkswagen, you just don't notice it. It's fine. I feel no need to turn that off. Now, the speed warning on the Volkswagen is what they should all be. It's just subtle. Now, yes, I want to be warned if I'm going over the speed limit, but what I don't want you to do is scream at me constantly if I'm doing 31 and then I drop back down to 30 and then accelerate to 31 again because I've just rolled a little bit quicker, and then you start screaming at me again, which is what the Ford does and what many other vehicles do now with electronic driver aids. With the Volkswagen, it's just a really subtle, quiet bing. So much so I don't feel the need to turn it off because I want to know if I'm going over the speed limit, but I want to know in such a way that it's a gentle reminder and then doesn't constantly bing at me loud. So what Volkswagen have done with their driver aids on this vehicle, I'm really impressed with. It's so much better than modern Porsches I've driven. My wife's got her own Ioniq 5 and I absolutely hate the driver aids on that. Many other vehicles I've tried, including the Ford Transit, the Volkswagen is so much more subtle, and you leave it on because it's not a bother. It's not stressing you out while you're driving, and it does exactly what I think they should do. Right, interior wise, I think Volkswagen have finished the seats off. I'm pretty sure underneath all this seat cushioning it's exactly the same bolsters as the Ford, but I just prefer the finish and the pattern that Volkswagen have done. I think it's just more very Volkswagen-esque in the way they've done that. I really like the infotainment system on both vehicles. I love the massive big screen. It's very intuitive, all the information it gives you. It connects instantly to your CarPlay. It connects quicker than any other vehicle I've ever been in. The Ford and the Volkswagen, it's so much better than the T6.1 was. It's so better than many other vehicles I've driven, including like high-end luxury cars. As soon as you get in, your CarPlay's on the screen there and it's working straight away. No connectivity issues. I like the digital display. I like the dash. It gives you lots of information. Like, it tells you when you need to, like, your quality of your oil. Again, going back to the wet belt issue people complain about, but it tells you a lot of information on the screen with these digital dials that still look like a traditional dial, so giving you a needle to show you your revs and how fast you're going. I like the actual physical touch buttons along here. I think if I was being super picky, I would like physical touch button temperature controls for the heater. With both of them, you have to kind of go in and plus and minus them on a touch screen, whereas I would still like a kind of turning dial. But I think over the years we'll still see either people are going to get used to that, or we'll see it revert back to more, for something like the heater, a really simple dial to turn it up and down. Handbrake wise, took me a while to get used to this, but the handbrake, or the parking brake, is up here. Now I really like it there. Initially I'd be sitting here going, right, how do I take the handbrake off? And it'd take me a while to realise it's there. After you drive so many different vehicles like I do, this was when we first had the Transit Custom. Now it's up here, I love it. Firstly, from a point of view from a camper conversion company, the handbrake was always an issue when it came to swivel bases. It meant the swivel bases, you either had to have a collapsing handbrake, or you had to have swivel bases higher. You had to have the handbrake off when you were swiveling the base. If you're on a campsite in a hill, you'd have to make sure the vehicle was in gear. But now the electronic handbrake is up here. It's great. You haven't got to worry about having to move up and down a handbrake when you come to things like swiveling seats. So dash-wise, very impressed with it. I like the feel of it, I like the texture of it, I like the way it's finished. There's plenty of storage areas, there's lots of cup holders. You can't have too much cup holders in any vehicle. The Volkswagen one, I prefer the placement to up here, like the T6.1, whereas the Ford is around here somewhere, and I felt myself knocking it. This particular dash had an upgrade. I can't remember what it was called, but it was almost like a comfort dash option that has this storage slot here. Great place to put your phone, great place to put your keys. The other ones have a slightly lower spec. We'll show you what the dash looks like on them, but they've got more of a fold-out cup holder. So when you're ordering them from new, it's well worth going for this additional centre dash thing. I don't think it was particularly expensive. You have lots of charging ports, USB, USB-C. You also have a wireless charging port underneath there to put your phone in. So it's very user-friendly, very easy to understand, and it makes it a really nice driving experience. These vans now have got so much more car-esque in the way they drive. I know they've evolved T5 to T6.1, but I think this is a really big step in making it feel so much like a car over a big slab box-sided commercial vehicle, which is what the previous one ones have felt like. So just going around into the lower spec van, still really nice finished. Obviously this one has had a full interior trim and steering wheel, or retrimmed steering wheel, which made it feel so much more like a car. Even with this one, the infotainment system and everything's still big, it's still very easy to use. Handbrake's still up here. The cup holder, as I said, on this one is just a bit tacky, not quite as nice as the extra dash. Still has your charging ports here and a place to put your phone. I do really like with the double seats that they have this pull out. It was an optional extra on T6.1s, but I think it's standard on these, but you have this extra pull out arm with storage in here. I just think it's a nice little feature on the double seat there. But yeah, all in all, very similar inside, just not quite as well spec'd in this one, but even the low spec'd one seems to have all the features. You know, I don't think there's possible to get one without air conditioning now and a bunch of other things. We bought this from VW, it was already sitting in stock, so we couldn't spec it, but we didn't have the option to add the breakaway camera to this one, which, having had a breakaway camera now, this really lacks it. It doesn't have a breakaway camera or a reverse camera, and not that it should really matter, but you get so used to using things when you drive this, you reverse it up, and then you realise you're like this far away from the wall because you're so used to having those driver aids now, unfortunately, that this film doesn't have. But we'll working on a retrofit solution so we can get one added to this vehicle as well. So that's it, that's my rate or hate on the T7. Generally, overall, I massively rate this vehicle. I'm a huge fan of it. There definitely are things about it I hate, which I've been through in here. This video, there's bits about it I thought I hated, but then when I used it, I realised I actually really rated. But overall, I absolutely love these vehicles. I love this platform. Looking forward to continuing to work on these and improving them and making you guys like them more. No, I'm not going to put an engine in that's not a wet belt, but yes, I am going to work on styling some new front and interior looks that hopefully win some of you haters over that are on the fence and aren't sure which direction you want to go. So this for me is natural evolution of the T6.1. I'm really impressed with what these vehicles are. The haters are still going to be there, but more and more people are winning over to them. The more they see them, the more they get to feel them, and I think if people drive them and get to experience them, they'll feel like I do, and they're really impressed with the outcome and what the new Transporter T7 actually is like. Hope you've enjoyed this video. It means a lot to us. If you hit that like button, it means YouTube shows it to more people, and then they get to experience our videos. Please do share this video with anybody that's on the fence on buying a T7 or really hates the T7 and you want to send them a video of me saying how great it is just to prove them wrong. Please do hit that subscribe button if you don't already, ring that little bell, and as always, thanks for watching.